that's just a shocking phrase to hear from people who have been in a 14-year relationship.
That's a huge red flag, and it's another reason why there has not been a wedding. If you see things extremely differently from your partner, that's a problem. You don't need to agree on everything, but you need to be able to see things the same way.
Or at least enough to be able to talk about it.
If you were together for 14 years and you don't feel comfy saying, hey, we're having a problem, like, that's insane. Welcome back to the Eternal Companions podcast. We're your hosts, Scott and Sarah.
On this podcast, we share the secret to developing and maintaining a long-lasting and fulfilling relationship. Well, on this episode, Sarah, I have prepared a few Reddit relationship posts for us to read. I'll read them to you. I've got a few questions prepared and thoughts, but not a lot. Okay. So
is the goal just to kind of get my perspective and then you share your perspective, or just to hear some drama?
I'm going to ask you, a bit of both.
Okay.
A bit of drama, a bit of conspiracy.
Ooh.
And I'm going to ask you some questions on get some relationship advice out of you, hopefully.
All right, we'll see.
All right.
I'm ready.
Okay, this first post is titled, and this is the longest one.
Okay.
So bear with me, and hopefully I don't sound too much like a robot. But this post is titled, "Wife said she can't be there for me during a time when I thought my mother was going to die."
Okay, starting off, this is crazy.
It's a little crazy.
All right, let's hear it.
Okay, take notes. Just kidding, I've got notes.
In my brain.
I've got my own notes.
All right.
My wife and I have been married for 17 years. We have one 13-year-old child.
Okay.
My wife doesn't have the best relationship with my side of the family. It's led to a lot of issues that we've been working through in counseling.
That's good.
In a nutshell, my wife hasn't felt that my family has respected her or that I've had her back when conflicts with them have come up. And I've felt that my wife's unaddressed anxiety issues have created conflicts with my family about things that are at times excessive and unreasonable.
All right.
So, anxiety. Obviously, it just said that. Let me reiterate, anxiety. For example, my wife is hypervigilant about COVID when it comes to my family, but less anxious about it around her family,
when was
friends,
this written?
Or random strangers. 4 days ago.
Oh, okay. All right.
She was hypervigilant about getting sick and contamination in general before COVID, but it was taken to a new level. We no longer get together for holiday family gatherings with my side because of this, and it's caused a lot of strain between myself and my parents. Part of this is that my parents have sometimes made my wife feel that her concerns aren't valid, feeling that they are far beyond current CDC guidelines. And this has made my wife felt unheard and disrespected. For my part, I've worked hard to be more empathetic to my wife's feelings and have frank discussions with my parents about this situation and how they have sometimes made my wife feel. My wife has been trying to address her anxiety and trust issues in therapy, but change has not happened quickly. Things between the two of us have been in an okay place lately. We communicate better than we have in the past, and I've learned how important it is for me to make her feel protected and understood, but in many ways, all of these issues have taken a toll on us. Okay, we're halfway.
Okay.
That's the exposition. That's the context.
So far, it doesn't sound too bad. Like, it sounds like things have been going well.
Yeah.
Let's hear it, though.
Making this harder, my mother has stage 4 blood cancer.
Oh.
I feel a lot of guilt and hurt about not spending more time with her and for denying her the chance to spend much time with her grandchild due to my wife's anxiety and trust concerns. Then, about a week ago, my mother had an emergency health situation where things deteriorated quickly. Fortunately, my mom recovered, but for a day or so, I felt like this might be the end for her. Since then, it's been an up and down roller coaster of her status changes and my emotions. My wife, who was initially very supportive for me during this, has now become kind of distant with me. When I tried to talk with her about this, she said she is just overwhelmed with stress and anxiety about all of this and can't keep hearing about my mom. She said it has nothing to do with past conflicts or guilt. She just can't be there for me or be what I need right now because the stress and anxiety of the whole situation is too much for her. This situation with my mom feels like something that is going to be more and more part of my life and something I need to emotionally prepare for. I don't want to have to face this alone or feel like I can't depend on my wife to be there emotionally for me during these times, or at least try to be there. I know it's hard, but if the roles were reversed, I feel like I would do anything to be what she needed in these moments. I said all of this as clearly as I could, but she still said she, quote, just can't.
Ooh.
She feels terrible and says she's sorry, but she says she's being honest. I don't know what to make of this. I feel hurt and abandoned during one of life's hardest moments. I want her to understand that I don't ask much of her, but I do need her to be there for me in times like these. We are so close in so many ways, but I'm learning that she feels that it's acceptable to just not engage with parts of our relationship that are hard. I also think that medication for her anxiety might help, but she's resistant on this. How can I encourage her to address these things without causing her to pull more away?
Wow.
Wow. Okay, before I ask any questions, any initial things that stood out?
Oh my gosh, tons. So like I said, halfway through, things sounded pretty good. Like they were going to counseling together. I also loved the language that he was using. Like, I understand this is how this person is feeling because of my behavior, or this person feels this way and this person feels hurt. And like, I feel that this author was very understanding of everybody's emotions. And so I was hoping that there would be some sort of not so bad thing happening, just because it sounded like he was a really mature author.
Well, they've been married for 17 years.
And they've worked through some stuff in counseling.
Exactly.
And so that was like a green flag for me. But wow, I got really disappointed when I heard the line about like not wanting to do this alone. Because when you get married, one of the benefits of getting married is that you never have to do anything alone. Like you have a life partner to go through these extremely hard things with. That's the ideal.
Well, that's the standard, you know, what do they say when you're getting married, right? They say in sickness and in health, in some other things, but it's, you know, in all of life situations, you vow to be there with them.
Right. And I feel that I personally would feel really disappointed if I didn't have an emotional support going through something that serious. Even if I wasn't married, I would hope that my friends would be there for me through that kind of a thing, or if I had siblings or another parent. So it's really concerning to me that this person believes that their spouse, their closest relationship on this earth, can't emotionally deal with this. And I believe, based on the minimal context that I have here, a reason for this may be due to this person's health anxiety. And because this is a health concern, it may be spiraling for her in a more significant way than if, let's say, the mom was having a financial crisis or something like that. Because it's a health related thing, it might truly be working her up to a point where she feels very uncomfortable.
Okay, and you said health anxiety.
Yeah.
Are there specific kinds of anxiety?
Oh, yeah.
Can you go into that a little more?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was listening to this, I kind of saw myself in it a little bit because, you know, I have health anxiety, and it turns out that it was actually...
Got a visitor.
Got another visitor. Every episode, our little puppy comes and visits us. So I thought that I had something called health anxiety for years. Turns out it was OCD.
Okay.
And I always thought that OCD was something else. We'll talk about that more in depth in a different episode. But there are lots of different categories of things that you can have anxiety about, or have intrusive thoughts about, or compulsions around. And based on the way that this person is concerned about contamination, about COVID and illness spreading, it leads me to believe that she has anxiety primarily around maintaining health. And so to have a close family member have cancer which is like every hypochondriac's worst nightmare. It's what WebMD says you always have anytime you start Googling that you have a stomach ache, right? Yeah. You're so scared of cancer. To have a very close family member dying of cancer would be really, really stressful.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that you get to check out from your responsibilities as a support system. Those are my high level thoughts.
Okay, so let's go into a couple of my other questions
Yeah.
then, because I want to ask, what does it look like to be there emotionally for a spouse who is going through a hard time, maybe specifically, the death of a parent?
That's a really interesting question. And I think that it varies based on the couple. I think if my mom passed away, I would want different support than you would want if your mom passed away.
Okay. Yeah. So learn, right? What would be helpful for you? I think a lot of like physical touch would actually be helpful, right? Physical reassurance.
It would like ground me
through hugging, and sitting by each other. What else would be some, what are some things that could be seen as emotional support?
Yeah, I think definitely, like you said, the physical comfort. I think making sure there are less stressors in other areas so that, and I'll get more detailed, so that you can have quality time with that person and ensure that they're okay. So if you had dinner planned with your brother, if you had the kids having a soccer tournament, whatever it is, canceling those events or getting the responsibility off of you two as a couple and letting those things kind of run in the background so that you truly do have the time to just sit together and not have all these other moving pieces on your mind and say, are you okay? How are you feeling about this? What do you want to talk about? Do you even want to talk? And just making sure that there is space for that, because as adults, there's thousands of things that need to get done every day, right? So trying to take those responsibilities away from that person and from your relationship for a period of time so that you can truly, truly focus on the emotional aspect of it would be important, I think.
So the emotional support itself could be really a lot of just like spending time together, talking or not talking, but like, physical proximity and closeness.
Knowing that someone is there if and when you need them.
Do you think it's enough if she were to handle all the other things, right? Because if she's being honest, like she really can't deal with like head on confronting this situation with his mother. What if she decided to support by, handle everything else, like you said, but then like avoid the emotional head-on support? Is that enough?
No. I think and for me, the answer is no, but everybody may have a different answer for that. For some people, that might be comfortable for them. And it also could depend based on what is going on, what the bad thing is that you need support about. If it's a parent passing away or a pet passing away, those two things are dealt with differently by different people. For some people, the pet passing away is a lot more traumatic than a parent passing away, or vice versa. And so it would have to be, you'd have to have such a strong knowledge of your partner. And if that is what would benefit them, then that may be enough. But I think for most people, the answer would be no. I think the only way that it could potentially end up being enough is if she came to her husband and said, this is extremely difficult for me to cope with right now. So I am not emotionally available to dwell on this too much right now. And I want to support you. So in the way that I'm going to support you by doing all these other things, and it's intentional. And that's my way of showing you that I love you and I support you. And I wish I could be there for you in more ways, but right now I don't know how to be. So I'm going to do everything that I can do. But if she just did all the other things, then maybe he doesn't even know that.
He might not even recognize that as her trying to help.
Right.
So communicating that is important because as an individual, especially when you're going through something hard, it is very difficult to notice what other people are doing
Oh,
around
absolutely.
you. And so her communicating that could lead him to see it, which then he would know, okay, she is there for me in the ways that she can be.
Right.
For me, my love language is acts of service.
Exactly.
And so that would be like the best way to support me, you know, is to help out with like
Everything else.
the errands and things that need to get done.
Right. I do want to say, though, I would be, and this may be a question, we can edit this out if I'm jumping ahead, but there's a 13-year-old daughter, right?
It's child.
So there is a child
Yeah.
in the picture. I would be concerned overall about how the child sees the parents interacting in this way and thinking, if something is really scary or I'm going through something big, mom isn't going to be there for me. So I would be really careful about making it too obvious that you're not being there for your spouse in like a very emotional way, because you could inadvertently push your children away because they know mom's not there for dad. So why would she be there for me?
Right. And also, you know, this child is potentially losing their grandmother.
Which is a whole other thing.
And they're a 13-year-old. They know what's going on.
Yeah.
And so they need support as well.
Right. And now the support has to come from a grieving father who is also not feeling supported. So
Yeah.
I don't see this ending well, but there are ways to make like tiny repairs, I think.
Okay. That was my heavy hitter questions.
Okay.
I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the smaller details in the story.
Sure.
What are your thoughts on anxiety medication?
I love it. I think that there is such a stigma around mental health medication and around mental health diagnoses as well, which we'll get into in a future episode. There doesn't need to be, because like almost everybody in America has anxiety or depression, or has had it or will have it. And if somehow they're lucky enough to not, someone very close to them will. And a lot of what we experience in terms of mental health crises can be somewhat resolved with medication, especially if therapy alone has not resolved things. Personally, I love it. Like I said, I've lived without anxiety medication and depression medication. I've lived with it. I went off of it again, and now I'm back on it. And I can tell you that the times when I'm on it, I am way nicer to you and to myself. And I'm overall happier, and I can deal with things that used to scare me. And I do have the emotional bandwidth to care for you emotionally and care for our daughter emotionally. Would I have that availability without being medicated? No. So
Yeah.
if they've done the therapy, if they've done the everything else, I would recommend trying it or being more open to it, because it's there for a reason. You know, those are my thoughts.
I had two thoughts I want to add to
Yeah.
that. When you are off of the medication, it affects me as well.
Oh, yes, it does. Big time. And it affects the whole household.
Yeah, one example that we might bring up in the other episode, was it the Disney World trip?
Yes.
We
Or the
booked
Disney cruise.
something like that.
It was a big Disney trip.
We booked, let's say it was like a week-long trip to Disney World, and flights, hotel in the parks, right? Multiple days, a day for each park,
The
plus like
dining
an extra
reservations.
dining reservations. Booked a huge trip. I told you, and you were like not excited.
I said, okay.
Okay. Which was not the reaction that I wanted.
Or expected.
Or expected, yeah. Because previously, when we've done things like that, you do a happy dance.
Like legitimately.
You can't control your excitement, so you have to dance it out of your bones.
Like genuinely. And so, yeah, that was a time when I was
That's an
off of
example.
medication.
Yeah.
And then now I'm on medication, and you're like, we're having salmon for dinner. And I'm like, ooh, doing a happy dance. It's like I'm able to experience a wider range of emotions a lot more regularly, which helps me to help other people with their emotions too.
Yeah.
So
Last thing I want to bring up on this one.
yeah.
What do you think is the worst case scenario if you try anxiety medication at a reasonable and small dosage as prescribed by a professional?
Like under the care of a medical professional. The worst case scenario is you have a small reaction to it. You have like cotton mouth or a drop in libido, headaches, and you go off of the medication within the first 6 weeks and you say, okay, that didn't work. Some people can have more severe reactions if they do have like a family history, and you can get like suicidal thoughts, which if that is someone's genuine concern, then they definitely would need to be like under the care of a psychiatrist as opposed to like a family doctor. But there are ways to manage those things. And if it's affecting your life and your relationship so much, I personally would take that risk. I would take that risk if it was going to help my marriage, my parenting, the way that I'm able to interact with others. I absolutely would take that risk. Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to number 2.
Okay.
This post is titled Sole Financial Provider and Don't Know What to Do.
We've both been in this position before, so let's hear it.
My fiance and I have been together for almost 14 years.
Okay. Stop right there.
Should get married.
Yeah.
Set a date. When we met, he was self-employed and I worked part-time.
Okay.
As I was newly divorced and raising 2 boys. 2 years after we bought a house together to be closer... 2 years after we bought a house together to be closer to my kids' school. He closed his business due to many factors beyond his control. Right? He was self-employed. I started taking on more hours and paid for all the house bills. He spent most of the time fixing up the house. It started taking a toll on me being the only one bringing in income. Now I was paying for house bills and improvements. So after another 3 years, he did get a job. That lasted about 7 years or so, and in 2021, he got let go. He was starting to have bad back problems at the time also. So fast forward to 2023, he's still not working, me working full-time and paying for everything. He has no desire to get a job, nor can he due to back pain. Debatable. He states he can't work. During the last 2 years, he has had no problem buying anything he wants. He has no friends or hobbies, so most of what he buys is for the house. Mind you, an espresso machine for $3,000, in my opinion, is not a necessity.
Oh my gosh.
I have a hard time talking to him about this as he has a complex about it, and we see things very, very differently. Parentheses, he is a conspiracy theorist. A few months ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Oh, no.
I had a lumpectomy and now going through radiation treatments. Now I have medical bills to pay also.
Yep.
He doesn't support my radiation.
What?
Even though he says he does. Like I said, he's a conspiracy theorist. I am overwhelmed and any advice would help. He won't do any type of counseling either. End the post.
I need to
There's
crack
a lot
my
going
neck.
on.
Hang on. Wow. Okay. I really did have to crack my neck. That wasn't for dramatic purposes, but wow. Okay.
My first thoughts are like, what conspiracies is it like? It sounds kind of like a prepper or like an anti-establishment conspiracies in general.
Possibly.
I'm not sure.
There's some sort of conspiracy related to how radiation is going to make her sicker instead of healing her breast cancer. Probably. Okay.
Okay.
What in the world? First of all, for a 14-year-long engagement or relationship that has an engagement in it, if you have been together for 14 years, look at a 14-year-old child. That's how old your relationship is.
Yeah, well, 14 years is like a fifth or a sixth of your lifespan.
Right. So if you can't make a decision yet on when to get married, you're not going to get married.
Yeah.
Or if you do, it's going to end very quickly because there was a reason why you weren't getting married for 14 freaking years. That's crazy. That's crazy, first of all. There's a commitment problem.
I agree. I think that if you're going to get engaged, I don't know. We'll talk about this more in other episodes. But marriage is great, and committing to a person is awesome, and delaying it after an extended and very reasonable period of time there's like only downsides.
It's suspicious. It's suspicious in my opinion. Okay.
So I wanted to ask you, how can you talk to someone who sees things very, very differently than you, right? How do you approach a conversation about a specific topic, in this case, the finances, with someone who disagrees and is, behaving in a way that makes it uncomfortable for you?
Right. I think that something that's really important is to get on the same page with your partner on this fact that whatever I perceive is my truth. That's my experience. And whatever you're perceiving is your truth and your experience. So if you can agree on that, then you can tell them, from my perspective, this is my truth. This is what our life is. This is what's happening to me. Because then they can't say, well, no, it's not. Because that's usually what a defensive person would do. And you say, okay, it's not to you, but to me, this is how I'm perceiving this behavior, this emotion, this lack of employment, whatever it is. This is my truth. And I would say that start with that groundwork of understanding that.
I think that's very important. I think that sometimes saying my truth can sometimes come off wrong as well. I think a tactful way to say it is just to say, this is what I'm seeing.
Yep.
This is what I'm feeling. And that's an undisputable fact.
Yes.
Because you see and you feel, and no one else has your eyeballs or your brain and heart.
Right.
So.
And then also understanding like what that person is seeing and feeling is just as valid.
Yeah.
Even though you might think they are nuts, like that's your right to think they're nuts. That's what they're experiencing. And so trying to understand things from their perspective, or at least understand what their perspective even is, can be really helpful. And it can just kind of dilute the conversation a little bit, if that makes sense, to instead of having it be super pointed, saying you're doing this, you're doing that, it's causing a ruckus in the house and my heart and my life, just like this is what I'm experiencing.
A ruckus in my heart.
I would, if I was this person,
your heart would be ruckus.
I would have a ruckus in my heart, Scott. I would, because I can't. If you were sitting around here saying your back hurt all the time and so you couldn't work, I would say open up your laptop.
Espresso.
Yeah, but you're renovating the house and you're buying a $3,000 espresso machine. I would have a problem and a ruckus in my heart.
Yeah,
I would.
This is something we'd probably need more context for.
Probably, I hope.
He can get a job that doesn't require manual labor, probably.
Yeah.
If he can't sit in a chair at a desk all day, you can get a standing desk and you can work around that and work from home.
Yes.
And there are options, in my opinion. I don't have all the context, but there probably is something he could do. The second question is, we don't actually know their budget and finances here. We can assume that there's a struggle because of the way the post is written. But maybe they don't have any debt and she's just feeling upset.
Even if there wasn't a financial struggle, I think that there is like a pressure to being the sole provider. And so even if you do have enough money as the sole provider, to see your spouse sitting at home all day, spending your money left and right on frivolous things like the $3,000 espresso machine when you're off at work, maybe she doesn't enjoy her job. Maybe she would rather be sitting at home, like you can easily get,
unfair.
You can get resentful.
So those are, kind of the things that we don't have enough context to really talk about. But I wanted to kind of go back to what we were saying. It sounds like it should be solved or could be solved with a conversation, an intentional conversation. And I wanted to take a step back, even from what you said, coming at it, understanding each other's perspectives. Even a step before that, I think it should be, hey, I want to talk about this. let's do it this day, right? Or when do you feel you could have a conversation about our finances? Make it kind of formal, right?
Set a time
that both can come prepared emotionally to have this discussion. You don't want to spring that on someone and say, they're in the kitchen doing the dishes, of cleaning out their espresso machine, and you come up and you say, hey, you're spending all my money. Like, that's not the best way to do it.
That's not effective. That's going to be perceived as nagging or whining as opposed to like a genuine concern.
Yeah. And a team approach.
Totally.
Hey, we should discuss this. I'm feeling like I'm having some difficulty. I want your help, your feedback, and I want to figure this problem out together.
Yeah. And letting them know, like, hey, you can come to the conversation with your own talking points as well.
Yeah.
Is important, because it should be a team effort. And if they don't have any talking points, then they have no business buying a $3,000 espresso machine.
Also,
that's a joke, but
the last thing I wanted to mention on this one is the phrase that she says. The author says, I have a hard time talking to him about this. We see things very, very differently. That's just a shocking phrase to hear from people who have been in a 14-year relationship.
that's a huge red flag, and it's another reason why there has not been a wedding. If you see things extremely differently from your partner, that's a problem. You don't need to agree on everything, but you need to be able to see things the same way.
Or at least enough to be able to talk about it.
If you were together for 14 years and you don't feel comfy saying, hey, we're having a problem, like, that's insane. All the time I come to you and I'm like, hey, are you available to talk about this right now? Whatever it is. And I feel so confident that it would never blow up because we're on the same team.
Yeah.
It's always, this is a huge lesson that I've learned, and I try to tell all of my friends in relationships, and even on these posts and stuff when I do end up commenting, especially on like the Wives Club and stuff like that on Facebook, is it's not you versus him or you versus her. It's you and your spouse versus the problem. And if people would just adopt that mentality, I feel like there'd be less of these posts.
Wisdom. Pure wisdom from Sarah.
Heck yeah.
All right. That's probably all we're going to get to on the second post.
Okay.
All right, Sarah, we have just a few minutes before nap time is over. So let's see if we can get through Reddit post number 3.
I'll try to be less long-winded.
This one is called Wife is Obsessed with Writing Fan Fiction and Playing Games, has no interest in anything else, including our relationship.
Yikes.
My wife, 30-year-old female, and me, 29-year-old male, have been married 3 years. We used to go out occasionally and have a good time when we did. We both play video games, me only a bit, but in the last 5 months, she has become completely obsessive with her games and writing Tumblr fan fiction about her games.
No.
To give you an idea, she is on every day I get home at 5 p.m. and will stay on until 5 a.m. most nights, also drinking.
Oh.
It's terrible for her health and for our relationship. I don't feel like I have a wife anymore. It's like having a roommate that keeps to themselves. She still loves me, and I believe that. She is affectionate in the short times when we are in the same space, hugging, small kisses, etc. But other than that, we are barely intimate. There's hardly ever time when she's on her game until 5 every night/morning. I told her how bad what she is doing is for her health and our relationship. She acted like she understood, but she clearly doesn't care about me enough to change anything. For us to get out and do anything requires me to push her, and when we are anywhere, it's like she is just counting the clock until she can get back to her computer. I can't help but feel like she is basically getting all her romantic relationship needs from her romance fan fictions.
Oh, yikes.
Now our relationship is boring to her, and she has nothing to put in. I just feel so lonely.
Oh.
I plan to bring it up again, but last time I thought we had a good talk, and it meant nothing to her. All right.
Okay, so is she bored because he's not like a Viking, or like, I'm confused?
Well, we don't know what kind. Maybe a lizard man or a space astronaut.
Or Tom Nook from Animal Crossing.
Tom Nook. So there's obviously a problem. The problem is they're not spending time with each other.
Mm-hmm.
She's focusing on something else. way too much.
To a severe degree.
To the extent I would call it an addiction.
Yeah. I mean, if you do anything that much, it's a problem. Even if you're exercising for 12 hours a night instead of being with your partner, that's a problem. If you're sitting there meal prepping for 12 hours a night, if you're reading the Bible for 12 hours a night, things that people might think are good. If you're doing that for 12 hours and you're not sleeping, you're also consuming a lot of alcohol during that time. Like, I don't care what your stance is on alcohol. That's not a healthy thing.
Yeah.
And you're not prioritizing your relationship when it's previously been identified that this is something that's hurtful to your partner. Red flags everywhere.
It's definitely bad. So my question for you, how can you communicate that what your partner is doing is hurting you without it leading to them being defensive and it becoming an argument?
In this case, I have no clue. Because they've already tried to have that discussion and it didn't stick for some reason. I don't know what the right thing to do is here. What would you do in this situation? Especially you like video games.
Yeah.
What would you do?
Well, so the tips we talked about in our last Reddit read, right? Including set a time to formally talk about it. Make sure you understand that each other have different perspectives. Aside from that, I think that point number 2 there is key. Because if she truly understands, what my partner sees and feels is their world and their reality, when you say something like, I feel like I don't have a wife anymore, they should understand that
this is serious. Major. Yeah, I completely agree with that. That's really all that I can think to do is just try again and try to communicate more clearly how it's actually affecting you, and maybe even come to the table with a solution. Saying, it would really be awesome if every Saturday night you and I could go to dinner together and not bring our phones or something, try to set a goal of some sort. And because he did say he had to push her, maybe try doing that. There's also the opportunity to potentially try to get involved in the hobby together.
I was going to bring that up.
But try to dial it back. I'm not going to stay up with you till midnight every night playing games.
Right. I was going to ask, do you think it would be worth it? What if they wrote fan fiction together?
I just don't know how that could ever be enjoyable for anybody. But if that's potentially that could be something that they could bond over, but she would have to do one of his hobbies as well. It can't all just be, let me do what you like to do, and I'm going to bend my own preferences to fit your lifestyle. It could be, we'll do your fan fiction or whatever, play your games, but then I want you to come golfing with me, or I want you to come to this movie with me. And you have to make those compromises to get to know your partner more.
Yeah, that's reasonable. And I think if you really are in love, if you do an activity together, no matter what it is, you can enjoy it.
Absolutely. If we're doing taxes together, we can make it fun.
We can.
And
we've had
fun memories of taxes. So
there's a lot of funny tax memories, which is odd to say.
That is odd to say, but
but it's the truth. Uh-oh.
Nap time is over. Can our listeners hear the pterodactyl in our home?
They probably can't because the microphones probably aren't picking that up. But
lucky them.
Nap time is over. I think we've got some good tidbits from each of these Reddit posts.
And you got to hear the drama.
Any final thoughts?
Fan fiction is dumb.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Just kidding. I think what was my wisdom that I shared before? Okay, it's you and your partner versus the problem, not you versus your partner. That's my number one piece of advice.
You heard it here. We will see you next week.
Bye. Thanks so much for listening to this episode.
Do you have a love story worth sharing? Head to eternalcompanionspodcast.com to be a guest on our show.
And don't forget to check out the show notes.
See you next week.